Forward 4 continues now with the Automation as a Boardroom Imperative panel discussion. To moderate, please welcome Bain partner Michael Herrick.
Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be here today. I'm very excited to be joined by three CIOs that are leading practitioners in automation. The Office of the CIO has become increasingly important in driving automation success. Today, we're going to talk about how automation is enabling their business strategy, how to drive a successful automation program, and most importantly, provide you with some practical tips on how you can more effectively partner with your CIO. So let's bring to the stage our three panelists. Great. Thank you so much, Peter, Naveen, and Prakash, for joining us. Let's start with a quick introduction. Peter?
So hi, everyone. Peter Tesalis. I'm the CIO of Strategic Services and Advanced Technology at Wells Fargo. You can think of it as a sort of software company embedded inside of Wells Fargo to manage large platform deployments.
Great. Naveen?
I'm Naveen Zutshi, Global CIO for Palo Alto Networks.
Hey, Prakash Kota, CIO for Autodesk. We make things so that our customers can make anything.
Great. Well, why don't we jump right into it? It would be great, maybe starting with you, Prakash, to share about your journey around just digital more broadly, what you're trying to accomplish, and the role that automation is playing.
Yeah, sure. Thank you. I would say, from a company standpoint, Autodesk, as I mentioned, we used to be a software company shipping DVDs to our customers, and we have been going through a huge business model transformation of becoming a subscription company. And so now we give access to our products in the cloud. And so with subscription company, it's all about continuous value. And digitization is a crucial part. And what do we mean by digitization? It's removing friction from the users, whether that's customers, partners, or employees. And so how do we remove friction? That's where automation comes into play. A huge play, I would say, leveraging automation behind the scenes to give the experiences to the users.
Great. Naveen?
Yeah, thanks. So I think very similar to Prakash's journey in Autodesk, we as a company are a cybersecurity company. We started as a next-gen firewall company, and that was our genesis. But over time, because of customer needs, we have become an end-to-end cybersecurity company, especially in cloud security as well as AI and ML-based security for our SOC. And so as the transformation happened, as the business transformation happened, IT had to transform and enable the business. And for that to happen, a lot of work has to be done and had to be done in both in automation as well as transforming and enabling capabilities, subscription capabilities, customer success capabilities, onboarding and activation capabilities for our customers. And so we have been extraordinarily busy as a result of the business transformation. We also had close to 15 acquisitions over the last 2 to 3 years. So integrating those acquisitions onto a common platform has been a strategy of ours as well.
And Peter?
So Wells Fargo, similar to other larger banks, we've had two big driving forces in the last 5 or 6 years. So the sustained low interest rate environment is one of the biggest ones. And you kind of forget about it after a while because it's been for so long. But that's driving tremendous expense pressure in the banking sectors. So as long as low interest rates are present, our ability to make income off of interest is limited. So that's one big driving force. And then, events like COVID and even before COVID, our customers are looking for different ways to interact with us. As generations move through, it's not enough to just have a branch, to service a customer. So digitizing experiences and enabling workflows for your customers that can happen through their phone, that can happen automatically, that can happen in a predictive way. That's driven a whole evolution of technology, starting with mobile, going into AI, and now leading into automation tools as well.
How big is Wells Fargo's automation program?
It's big. We have, I'll say we have hundreds of people working on automation, many hundreds of people. We have many thousands of bots alone, in addition to other automation tools in play. And we measure our ROI in these cases in the tens of millions per iteration. So considering how broad our solution sets are, banking, brokerage, mortgage, the number of workflows that are ripe for automation is pretty significant. So it's a pretty significant program. We started our journey with automation in particular about 5 years ago.
Okay, great. Well, let's jump right into some more controversial topics, I think. So, when we talk to a lot of CIOs, some CIOs are pretty excited by RPA and the value that RPA can bring, while others are a bit more skeptical, to be honest. It's a Band-Aid solution. Maybe we should wait to sort of upgrade core systems. What are your views on RPA and how it fits and maybe how it doesn't fit in your automation program? Naveen, why don't we start with you? What's your perspectives on RPA?
Yeah, so I think I got to know about UiPath and Automation Anywhere and other companies like 4 or 5 years ago. And initial sense was, hey, maybe it's a rule-based engine. We are changing as a company so dramatically. We are growing at 60% year over year. With all the business processes changing, will it be able to succeed in automating this dynamic workflow? And I was honestly wrong. We implemented UiPath now for 3 years, and it has really transformed or helped us transform a lot of the business processes. Started with operations. Now we have it pervasive in sales ops, finance, accounting, legal, tax. We are doing some really, really interesting use cases, which we have automated using RPA. So it definitely has it's one of the tools in your toolbox, so to speak, when it comes to automation. We use chatbots or ML as another tool in the toolbox, or we use software programming as a traditional means of automation as well. So if I look at my last 3 years, probably 40% of our automation was enabled through RPA.
Okay, wow, 40%. Now how about Prakash? What's your views on RPA relative
I would say RPA is, it's definitely significantly added value, but it's not the only thing in the whole automation ecosystem. And as long as we clearly think in that lens, because naturally, when you talk about bots and everybody having a bot, it's definitely an exciting thing. And so when you bring in new tools, and especially in a software company, people get excited. A new tool to play with. So I think the important thing is to define what is RPA for and what is it not.
Right.
And what should we leverage other things in like intelligent automation, cognitive automation, or AI, or desktop automation. We clearly need to define and have some governance structure where we need to leverage. But there are situations like within a particular application portfolio, if you're trying to automate, maybe RPA may not be the right thing. But when you have multiple applications and business processes flowing through where human is in the loop, I think RPA plays a big role there. And there may be legacy systems and business process where in the next few years you'll retire, and there are repetitive tasks and other things. It may be a good place to put a Band-Aid there. To your point, if CIOs are thinking it's a Band-Aid solution, in some places, maybe that's a quick win to have a Band-Aid, but not for everything. I think that's the key thing, understanding where it is worth and where you should put and what value. And sometimes it may be for a short term, but you need to be explicit about that so that you don't get into conversations later on, oh, it only served 3 months. Maybe that's what the life was.
Right. So Peter, we have a pretty diverse audience here in terms of it's not just people from, say, IT, but it's also business functional leaders as well. And some business functional leaders will say, scaling is my #1 challenge, and I find that IT is sometimes in the way. They're actually slowing down my progress, not actually pushing it forward. I guess what advice would you give around what's the right way to set up a successful sort of automation program? What are the key things that should be in place to help business and functional leaders, work more effectively with IT? So
Yeah,
what do you think at Wells Fargo?
You know, at Wells Fargo, and I think similar in financial institutions, you have to know your bottlenecks,
Okay.
right? It's easy to say, I have this large business portfolio, let's say it's an operations portfolio, ripe for automation, huge opportunity to save tens of millions. It's easy to advertise that. And then it's disappointing when it's like, oh, it's going to take a while to mobilize the right team to do it. And why is that? It's not enough to just have citizen developers, an army of them charge in and do it. It's not enough to have a center of excellence. You need those things. They're critical. But at the end of the day, automation tools like RPA are used to simplify, modernize, correct existing workflows. And you need the SMEs of those workflows engaged. And usually those are some of the busiest people at the bank, right? They're the only ones that are not being freed up to work on other things. They're locked in. So the advice I would give to everyone out here is understand your bottlenecks, understand where you need to free up, bandwidth intelligently, right? You need both the people that can apply the tools well. You need to normalize that so they can apply them to all the challenges they face. But you also need to find those key contributors to those key workflows that understand them well enough to be the knowledge masters, right? To guide the hand of all the automators that are going to go out there and do the work. So that's maybe the biggest piece of advice I'd give.
Naveen, how about you? You've obviously got a pretty mature automation program at Palo Alto. What do you think is important to set up a successful automation program?
Yeah, I think it's going to vary by company, right? So, like, take Wells Fargo and us. We are technology companies that's so different, right? For us, the currency is speed, right? So that's the only currency that we understand, because if we are not moving fast enough, another startup in security is going to move faster than us and disrupt us. So that is well understood. That mission is well understood around cybersecurity. And as a result, to Peter's point around SMEs are overwhelmed by the amount of work they have to do. And if you look at G&A as a percentage of spend in tech companies, we want to leverage that against product and sales spend. Right. So product and R&D spend is going up. G&A is probably not going at as much. So how do you drive efficiencies in that context? You drive that efficiencies through automation. So I believe it's incumbent on the business leaders to share their strategy and the strategic challenges they are facing with the IT org. And then the IT org is accountable for really working with the business in automating at the speed that the business needs. So not having that, we will fail in our strategic mission. So that's really important for the business and IT leaders to come together.
Do you have an automation center of excellence at Palo Alto?
Yeah, so two practical tips there. One, we have a steering committee, which is formed by the business leaders as well as IT. And we meet quite frequently to prioritize our backlog of work and also identify use cases that are relevant for automation through RPA as an example versus other means. And then we have a COE, which is offshore and onshore team, centralized, that is constantly delivering against the steering committee's directive.
Yeah, gotcha. We're pretty similar to that,
Are
too.
you?
I think those structures end up looking pretty similar regardless of size, I think.
Yep.
Yeah,
How about you, Prakash, at Autodesk? Yeah.
We do have a center of excellence. I think going back to the original question about IT being in the way, right? I think we all, especially the IT leaders or IT team members, may need to pause and really think. If that's the perception out there across the industry, right? We can always say, oh, everybody thinks like that, is one way to say it. But the other way is, over traditionally, IT wanted to do the technical or technology-related work to the business divisions, which means it's almost like a funneling approach. You go everything, so things slow down, and as Naveen was mentioning, speed is the essence now. It's like, I need it yesterday.
Right.
So the role that IT needs to play, it's a mindset shift. You need to be an enabling function. Like, you need to create governance, guardrails, and enable different functional groups to self-be-sufficient. There are certain complex things, of course, we need to design and help them build, but you don't need to build everything. And that's where you can get out of the way too, by enabling different functional groups, but of course having certain rules on how do they operate and how do they play. In that way, you are always involved in the decision making or in the solutioning. If you say, no, I'm the only person who will do it, and then you get back in line, and the backlog is there till next year, people are like, okay, IT is slowing me down.
Right.
But now you have this platform mindset, you're enabling your teams to do it, and there are certain things that you will best to do it because they're so complex and you need to keep in mind of all the other non-functional aspects. That would make sense. So I would say it's more an inward opportunity too for IT teams and leadership to really think about how do we operate? Why is that perception like that? And really evolve so that you are never seen as being in the way, but you are along with them in the journey.
Now, all three of you have done quite a bit of work in automation, and as we all know, this is hard stuff to do, hard to get right. And a lot of people have, sort of war stories. I guess I would ask you guys, do you have a war story from your organization where you really learned along the way, whether it's IT or just even more broadly, it could be the business and functional leaders as well, from your experience that you would think would be important for the audience to, learn from as well? So Peter, I don't know if there's something that comes to mind for you.
I have it's a positive war story. I'll put it that way. I don't think we suffered. COVID changed a lot, and with COVID came a lot of, federally driven programs, and the SBA, Small Business Loan Program, PPP program, many of you have heard of it. Sort of out of the blue, the government said, we're going to make loans available. All you banks have to, accept these. We'll underwrite them, so on and so forth. When that sort of stuff pops up at a large bank that typically takes a while to spin up the machinery, it's sort of a shock to the system. And our reaction time means a lot, because if we're slow to market with that solution, but our competitors are fast, meaning Wells Fargo small business customers can't apply for the loan on the same day that a Chase customer or a Bank of America customer can, it looks poorly on us. We're not servicing them. And one thing we did, when the program came around is we took the full breadth of our automation technology and, rather than throwing people at this problem or trying to sort of hack together, a war room with, systems connected with wires to manage this, we put the full power of our automation platform to work, a lot of it with UiPath, and we created long connected automations to both make it easier for an agent to walk through a process, so speed up the workflow, and also create end-to-end auto-approved experiences. We managed to get upwards of 25% of our applications straight through processed without a human.
Wow.
By using the application tool set. So I think you have to broaden your horizons when you think about your automation tool set. It's not about automating 3 crappy systems so that fewer people have to use them. There's all these applications of automation tools that go well beyond simplifying a swivel chair action or connecting 2 applications together. They can be used for rapid response, like in this example. They can be used as risk and control tools when you need to bring not speed or efficiency, but consistency to a particular workflow, particularly at a large bank. Doing that consistency, that predictability makes it possible for you to put in control points. Those control points protects you from risk and control gaps from emerging. So a pretty interesting storyline there.
How about you, Prakash? Anything from your experience?
Yeah, so I would say some of the learnings that we have had, or horror stories or war stories, is when we initially brought in UiPath and RPA, people just wanted to automate things. And so it was, well, we are trying to define a new business process. We have not yet completed defining business process, and the team is ready to automate, and you're still defining the business process. And then you start complaining, oh, the automation doesn't work, oh, but the process was not defined. So I would say the key learning that we have had is we need to make sure we focus, slow down. You need to always go slow to go fast. So you really need to slow down and understand and spend more time on the design and having the right business process outlined and having a clear business owners on that process owners for that particular area before you start focusing on automating. I think there was so much effort to just get it automated without having those processes documented.
Really the intake process.
And also the end-to-end, having that clear ownership and defining what it is. Otherwise, the bot really can't do what it needs to do. So I think there are a lot of learnings, initial pains, I would say, growing pains that we had.
Right.
But I think we have come a long way from that stage to where we are now.
So Naveen, I guess, have you changed any of your perceptions due to COVID? So the impact from the pandemic, has there been a change?
Wow.
You think, maybe for you personally, or do you think the CIO community has had any changes in viewpoints around automation driven by the pandemic?
Well, besides the fact that the original assumptions around productivity in a work environment where you had to be physically present have completely been turned upside down. People are more productive, just as hardworking and just as committed and engaged in a remote setting. And what you see now in a hybrid workforce is something that's going to be there permanently. So that's a big shift in the way we work. And that has translated into huge amounts of opportunities for us as a company in terms of the cybersecurity offerings we present, and also in terms of IT. So we instituted a flex work program as an example that we rolled out with other companies in the Bay Area. And the notion was it's around employee choice, and employees get to choose their benefits, their location preferences, their learning preferences, and we built an entire tool stack from ground up as a result to provide them intuitive, really experiential learning that they can leverage through the FlexWork platform. So that has been a huge undertaking, and it's just been a huge opportunity for us. And we continue to learn, right? I think this hybrid workforce and how we can make our employees engaged and continue to engage them in a hybrid setting is an area that we are continuing to do more work on.
Okay. So there's also a continuing question around sort of what's the right governance model? You know, what role should IT or the CIO play around automation? And I think here, you know, during this great event, we've seen all sorts of models: COEs in IT, COEs outside of IT, chief automation officers, chief digital officers driving automation. So many different models, right? I guess, what's your views on what you think, you know, maybe not the absolute right model, but in your company, or just your opinion, what you think the right role of the CIO should be around governing automation? Maybe start with you, Peter.
You know, it takes a village. A CIO, a technology team, understands how the technology works and can look 2 or 3 levels down and say, okay, we have something that can be automated, we have something that should be modernized, we have documents that need to flow in a certain direction. And IT-level governance, or COEs, are really good at looking across that spectrum and understanding, okay, we use bots this way here and that way there, and they should have a limited lifespan here and a longer lifespan there. But it's not enough, because I mentioned earlier, we're trying to automate, a lot of the things we're trying to automate are legacy business flows. So you need your business partners in the game in a significant way. It's not enough for them to say, we want to save 30 million by next quarter, and let's automate stuff, go. They need to put skin in the game. So you almost need a steering committee level participation from very senior business leaders that's set up in such a way where they feel compelled to say, okay, I'm going to find ways to free up time from my key subject matter experts.
So you're more focused, Peter, on the governance aspect as opposed to who owns it. Is it this organization or that organization?
Yeah.
Or of how do you get all these different stakeholders to work together?
It's all about getting a consistent stakeholder appreciation of the scope. I find that the deployment, the actual implementation of the bots, it's easy. It's work, but it's easy. We find populations of people, we upskill them. It's a great story to tell there. We deploy them into the right environments. We give them target specifications. They can go to work. The hard part is building the consensus with all the stakeholders you need and educating them on what automation can achieve for them. Right. Because right now we're at a maturity curve in the automation world where not everyone in every level understands the implications of it. For some, it's just, oh, it's this thing tech people do to turn a knob and make things cheaper. What we need is that deep understanding to penetrate and say, hey, we use automation tools, we use them to take expense out of a long-running legacy workflow or a poor legacy workflow. We use them to simplify workflows. We use them to introduce consistency in control structures. We rapid response to events, and as connective tissue between even modern systems. And you need to understand the implications of each of those use cases, and your stakeholders need to understand those.
What do you think, Prakash?
Yeah, so I would say, see, in the governance aspect,
Yeah.
I know sometimes the word governance, steering committee, all these like heavyweight, overhead kind of terms. But I would say the key thing, whether it's a lightweight process or whatnot, about all the non-functional aspects of it are the crucial, which doesn't come naturally if you are not part of IT. And of course, it's a role of IT to really keep hashing those things, whether it's security, governance around security, compliance, reliability, availability, because it's not just building the bots. Now maintaining it and sustaining it and ensuring that it's doing what it is supposed to do, and anything associated to it, whether all the aspects of non-functional stuff that we talked about, people need to know that if they are wanting to own this, they really need to take care of all of these elements. It's just not about the bot doing the automation work that it is supposed to do.
Yep.
I think that's where the governance also comes. It's not just about building it, it's about maintaining it. And also, at some point, you need to retire, because we all have landscapes where we keep adding new applications and tools, but we don't spend enough time to retire stuff. And similar will be the case when we start talking about hundreds and thousands of bots. At some point, they should have a life cycle. And so the governance is not just about bringing in, but what happens? It has had its life. Now it's probably time to retire. That is other aspect of it that we need to really think through.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'll provide a slightly different perspective on this question, because I think it's the wrong question to be asking, in my opinion.
Okay.
So one, if we all believe that automation, we are early in the journey rather than late in the journey, right? Second, we believe there is tremendous amount of work need to be done in company to be where you are automation everywhere. You know, that was our strategy, and it's still our strategy, one of the core strategies in the company. Automation everywhere. So if you think about that strategy and you think that mission, we are in early innings of that mission, you have target-rich opportunity of problems to be solved. It's less about who owns it, it's more about, are you solving those problems?
Right.
And then are you solving them in scale and with the right kind of processes? For example, you have monitoring, you have logging, you have the framework, you have lifecycle management, you have change management with your employees, because guess what? When you bring these bots in, there is concern by our employees, are you disrupting their jobs? So that is an important aspect to be thinking about too. So I think focusing on the problems and focusing on all these areas becomes then a collective responsibility, and then the subject matter experts from technology and business come together and actually solve those problems together.
Great.
That's my
Perfect.
That's my thought.
So we've only got a little time left, so I asked for a quick response. So what's the one piece of advice that you'd give to the audience here on how to more effectively partner with IT? So what do you think, Peter? What would be the one piece of advice you'd give the group?
Biggest piece of advice, I'll use the term automate responsibly, right? And that means each time you automate a particular workflow, you have to understand the outcome very clearly, and that outcome has to be agreed upon across a business leader, an IT leader, sometimes risk and control leaders. And being responsible means understanding, hey, am I about to automate some process which really should be modernized instead? Right? Am I, the Band-Aid question from earlier, that's a realistic question. Am I elongating the life of a system that should be end of life, right, by putting in this patch? That's the fear. That's a realistic fear. So I think if you're automating responsibly, you're honest with yourself and your partners about, hey, in this case, I can achieve ROI in a very short window by putting in this automation, but I'm going to put a life expectancy on that bot I just did.
Yep.
So that it doesn't become the inhibitor to getting rid of the end-of-life concern, the broader end-of-life concern. So automate responsibly.
Love that. Prakash?
See,
What do you think?
I'll flip it the other way. Don't automate if the process is not clearly defined and you don't have a proper process owner identified. Because that's one thing that I've repeatedly seen. We are jumping into automating things without having a clear process and a process owner. So I would echo to what Peter said and also say don't automate. Don't jump into automating things for the sake of it.
To wrap up with you, Naveen, what do you think?
Yeah, so I think in our case, bring IT early on in your strategic journey. The sooner you bring them in, either they help solve your problem. If they don't, you are going to do it yourself.
Great. Well, thank you so much, and have a great session, everybody. We really appreciate your time. Thank you, Peter, Naveen, and Prakash.
Hey, thank you, Michael.
Great.